So this is a demo of a project I've been working on to do with MIT App Inventor. So MIT App Inventor is this system that's quite nice. And in it, when you go in, you can create mobile phone applications or template them out using drag and drop functionality. And you can just put things on the map and you can add buttons and you can actually go in and you can code with blocks. Now, I have a couple of issues with MIT App Inventor, and it's not directly to do with this platform itself. One of the platforms is that the institution I work for, it says MIT App Inventor is not really allowed because the student data is not domiciled or stored locally in the country I'm in. And the second thing is that the syllabuses that I work with as a teacher, they want text-based coding and not block-based coding. So I can't actually use MIT App Inventor in its current form. So I need a digital solution to overcome my difficulty. So I've been working on this for a couple of months and it's reasonably making good progress. There are a list of about 17 bugs that I currently have, and I want to try and solve all of those before I actually put the code out there. But I'm just going to give a little demo of it, and I'm going to build a small application, and hopefully everything will just work. Okay, so I'm just going to make a new file, and the way I do layout files in my little system is make an XML file. So I'm going to save this, I'm going to call it screen1.xml. I just want to, I'm in the right place. Save as L2 screen1.xml. And I'm also going to have a JavaScript file, which I'm going to call screen1.js. So for my XML file, this is where I design or set up all my layout features. So I have my root tag, which is called a screen, and I'm going to attach a script to it, which is going to be screen1.js. My screen needs a name to be called screen1. Every application in my system needs a screen1. I'm going to give it a title, and I'm going to make a stopwatch, just simple stopwatch. I'm going to call it stopwatch version 1.0. The size in my screen is going to be equal to responsive. So if you use the App Inventor platform, you'll find that these are all variables that you can adjust down the side. I'm going to set a background color equal to, I don't know, let's just make up a number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, it's a great number. So that will create a screen. And on my screen, I'm going to make some three buttons. So button, I'll give it a name. I'm going to call it the start button. I'm going to give it some text, which is going to say start. I'm going to give it a width equal to the parent, so the entire width of the screen. And close it off. I'm going to make a second button. I'm going to give it a name of stop button. Text on it is going to be equal to stop. This is going to be a width of 100%. So it accepts all the different types of measurements that are available in App Inventor. You can set parent or percentage or whatever you want. I'm going to make a third button. So I'm going to name as reset button. Everything needs a name. If you don't assign a name, it will manually generate a name for you when it runs the system, but you won't be able to actually access it in the code. This is going to say reset, and I'm going to set its width equal to parent as well. Now, as this is a stopwatch, it's going to need somewhere to print. So I'm going to create a label. This is text label. It's going to have a name. It's going to be a time label. I'm giving them all very creative names, I know. I'm going to set its starting text to be 0. I'm going to set its width equal to be the parent. Also, I'm going to set the text alignment equal to center and font size equal to 32. Now you might notice that I'm not really worrying too much about the cases for the attributes. That's because it's in the XML file, it's case insensitive. So what happens in the background is these all get converted to lowercase anyway. And then it does a bit of a lookup table to find the correct capitalization for that particular term. And I'm going to set the text color equal to, so these are just ARGB values. And I'm also going to need a clock, so I can actually do some timing. And so that will be my screen. Now, I actually want to see this, and in the background, what I have running is I just have the AI starter platform. So when you go to the App Inventor website, you can just download this and run it. And what I'll install is just a starter program. And from this, you can launch an emulator or connect to a device. So generally, I just connect via USB to my device and run this program. It works really nicely. You can also, in my system, you can also just put in a code, just like on Wi-Fi, and just connect through the Redis server and basically connect wirelessly, whether you're on mobile or cellular data or whether you're on the same Wi-Fi network. But I'm going to use this to connect and launch the emulator. Okay, so I need to run my index file. Like when this is packaged up nicely, it'll work really cool. What it's done over here, it's generated a helper file, and that helper file has worked out I've got some screens and some buttons and labels and clocks, and it's just generated some classes that will just help me out when I'm in my JavaScript file, so I can get easy access to all the methods and the documentation for each one. It's also generated a scheme file. So what happens is once it's generated the scheme file, this is what actually gets uploaded to the App Inventor app to run. And it also generates an asset list. So if I had anything I needed to upload, it would actually pick up the tags and work out what files needed to be uploaded and could upload those as well. Okay, so I'm just going to connect to the emulator, run 1. And so it said emulator mode. And let's see if it actually connects. So it's starting to do the check and it's launched the emulator properly. Sometimes I find the emulator a bit flaky on my system. I'm not sure what I'm doing interesting or difficult problems with the talking back and forth between my program and this. It works fine when I'm running by USB, so I'm not really sure. Maybe it's just the emulator. I hope it's just the emulator. Okay, so it's launched. Once it's launched, it should send the code through momentarily. You should document that down here on the command line. Eventually, there it is, screen info set to the device. Okay, and there's my thing. So there's been an error. I'm not sure why this error occurs. It's basically the device and my program need to keep track of the same number, which is kept here in sequence info. For some reason, the emulator doesn't like to play. Anyway, so I've got my 3 buttons and my reset. So now I can actually do some JavaScript code. So over here, I can require. Now, the program by default ignores require statements, but I'm going to require screen helper. So that will just let me pick things up in Visual Studio Code. So for example, I've got screen 1 as a variable, name of screen. But when I had a class, now I've got access to all its events. I can add an event listener for all the different events that it listens to. And I've got access to all the properties that I can set. So I'm going to build some code now just to demonstrate this, and I'm going to make a little stopwatch. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to create some variables, a global variable. So let's start time equals 0. And I'm going to create a variable called let running, is running, and that's equal to false. So when I initialize the screen, so screen 1 dot initialize, add event listener, and it's going to listen until this screen 1 is initialized, and that's going to run a function, it's going to run a callback. And all that I'm going to do in that function is I'm going to set the time label. So this is from the name over here. I'm going to go time label dot text is equal to 0. So I'm just going to make sure that's 0. Should be 0 in quotes. And I'm going to set the clock time interval equal to, I don't know, 10. It's the number of milliseconds. So that's just going to tell the clock to fire every 10 milliseconds. So I'm going to save that. And so over here, that code actually has loaded up into the background. Okay, so I need to do a couple other things. So let's make a little action happen. So I'm going to do, I'll just demonstrate. So start button. I'm going to add an event listener to that. And the event listener for this is going to be a click. So when I click on the button, and then I'm going to run a function just to call back. And just to demonstrate that works, I'm going to make it change the time label text equal to start, just to demonstrate this is working and to fill me with confidence. Okay, so it doesn't really like talking. Yeah, so this is the issue I'm talking about. Sometimes it loses sync with the emulator. So I'm just going to pause this and I'm just going to set up a little bit again. So I've just gone and reloaded the connection to the emulator. I don't get these errors when I'm connected via USB to an actual device or when I'm connected by Wi-Fi. So that's just something I'm investigating. That's one of my little bugs. But I can show you now when I click on the button, the start button, it actually triggers and runs this code. So I'm just going to quickly add a bit more code, and I'm going to actually turn this into a stopwatch and make it function. So I've got a stop button. It needs to add an event listener as well, which is a click. So when you add event listeners, it tells you all the events and gives you an example sample code for everything. That's just part of the JS doc that actually gets generated automatically by the screen helper. So this is a click. I'll run my function. And when I run the stop button, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the time label dot text is going to equal, and I think I'll just leave things in milliseconds. Actually, when I start, I should actually do a bit more stuff. I'm going to change the start time. Start time is going to equal the clock, get millis. So it's going to get milliseconds of whatever the current time is. So that's the number of milliseconds since epoch, like 1st of January 1970. And when I hit stop, it's going to print, and the time label, it's going to get the clock. Same thing, clock.milli, get millis, clock.now. And we're just going to subtract from that the start time. So I don't really actually need brackets around that. So that's what will happen when I'll do the start time. And I'm also going to set is running equals true. I'm also going to set my reset button. So reset button is going to be pretty much the same thing. But add event listener. And I click. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to give the illusion of stuff happening. It's going to set. It's just going to set the time label text to 0. Okay, so that should work. And now I need to actually add the updating time. So clock dot add event listener, and what it's going to listen for is the timer. So up here I set the timer interval. So this is going to basically, this is like a JavaScript time. It's going to trigger every 10 milliseconds or so. And all I'm going to do here is just run a function, and I'm just going to print the same thing I'm printing here. But I'm only going to do this if it's running, if is running. Now the reason I'm doing this is in my testing of this little thing before I made it, because yes, I did test it. I discovered that sometimes it does something a bit weird and updates the time before you hit start. So I'm not sure what's causing that. It might just be a bug in my programming or something. Okay, so I'm going to save this. It's going to send the information to the device, and we're going to send error. Okay, so I'm going to dump the emulator for now. I'm just going to connect wirelessly via mobile. So I've got my phone just mirroring on the screen. So I'm going to run the connection again, but this time I'm going to connect via Wi-Fi. So this will generate a code, the same as any other, as the system works on App Inventor. And I'm just going to input the code. LVU MQT, and I'll just connect with code. And so it will just bounce and run the connection, and it'll send the data over, and it just works so much better when I directly connect the phone. So now I can hit start, and we've got the timer running. We can stop it. I did something wrong. What did I do? Because when I stopped it, I didn't set is running to false. So is running equals false. So now I just save that, and it'll resync automatically. And so it just goes so much faster when I connect. Don't have any connection problems this way. So now I can start, I can stop, reset. So connecting to an actual device is a far nicer experience than actually running it through the emulator. So yeah, that's just really weird. So yeah, so that's just a really basic stopwatch and a bit of a demo of this application at the moment and how it's progressing at the moment. What I've got actually working, might as well talk about that. So this is a bit of an intro. Let's open App Inventor up again. I've actually made a reasonable good progress, I think. So I've got all the user interface elements work, every single one of them. All the layout works, everything in media works, all the drawing and animation works. I've got all maps, everything working except the feature collection. And I haven't put any charts in. I've got all the sensors set up as best as I can. There's a couple that I can't check, like the hydrometer, because my phone doesn't have one. I've got all the social things working. I've set up pretty much all the storage stuff. One or two things I can't check because I don't have an API key. And I've got all the connectivity stuff working as well. Well, I haven't checked the activity starter yet, but most of all that works out. I haven't put in Mindstorms or experimental, and there's no extensions at the moment. So I have pretty much the entire system working in terms of components, maps, and everything. There's a few little things that don't work, like the feature collection at the moment, where you import a GeoJSON file and it plots all the points for you. I don't have that. So I just got to work out how to fix that and get that working. And I just have one really weird feature where one of the elements I can't add to a list for some reason. In terms of JavaScript, it actually works. I can assign variables. I can use arrays, objects. I can do all my normal mathematical operations. So I can iterate, loops, for loops, while loops. I've got most of the array functions in there, like push, pop, splice, shift, you name it. This pretty much works. So yeah, I've got a fair bit of things working. There's just a little bit of a bug list that I've got to work through. My observations and problems. There's only about 15, 16 things on this. And there are a lot of them minor stuff, and some things I can't actually fix. So this is the one problem. I just can't put something to just one element I can't push to an array, which is really strange. Just a couple of things to check. So I've got there's a couple of numbers missing. So there's about 15 or 16 problems that actually need addressing before I'm happy to put it out for testing. But that's just my demo of my application to run MIT App Inventor using JavaScript and connecting directly through Node.js without even going through the server. It also can upload files. It doesn't have any file size limits like MIT App Inventor because you're connecting directly to the device. And yeah, so it's making reasonable progress. But this is just how I'm going so far.